Welcome to another video of osteology of the upper limb. So the bone that we are going to discuss today is scapula, and just like the pattern that we follow for every other bone is that first of all we'll study about the bony features. Once we are clear about the bony features, we'll be able to determine the side of the bone. Then we'll understand how it is anatomically placed in the human body. Finally, we'll discuss about the muscular and the ligamentous attachments of the bone, and then we'll discuss about the clinical conditions associated with the bone. So we'll start with the surfaces. First of all, as you can see here, scapula basically has two surfaces, an anterior surface and a dorsal or posterior surface. So the anterior surface is relatively concave in appearance because it rests on the bulging thoracic cage. So therefore it has a relatively concave appearance and is also known as the costal surface because it rests on the ribs. Moreover, it also has another name that is known as the subscapular fossa. Now this anterior surface, costal surface or subscapular fossa is basically marked by the presence of faint ridges, which you can see here. Ridge 1, the second ridge, the third ridge, and then there is also another more prominent ridge extending from the superior towards the inferior aspect, and it is present just adjacent to the lateral border of scapula, giving this part of the bone quite broader appearance, and this particular part of the bone looks like a rod in shape. So now coming towards the posterior or the dorsal surface, the posterior or dorsal surface is relatively convex in appearance as compared to the concave appearance of the anterior surface. Apart from that, this posterior surface is divided by a spinous process into a superior part and an inferior part. This superior part is basically known as the supraspinous fossa, and this larger inferior part is referred to as the infraspinous fossa. About the borders of scapula. So the scapula basically has a superior border, a medial border, and a lateral border. The superior border, as you can see clearly, is relatively shorter in length and is marked by a short notch here, a small notch here. This notch is known as the suprascapular notch because again it is present on the superior aspect of the scapula. Now coming towards the other two borders, this border here is the medial border, because it is directed towards the median plane or towards the midline, and it is relatively thinner in appearance as compared to the broader or thicker lateral border. Now why again the lateral border is more thicker? Because of the presence of this longitudinal ridge that is present just adjacent to this lateral border. Processes that are extending from the scapula. These processes are again three in number. The first process that we have already discussed is the triangular spinous process that is present on the dorsal surface of scapula. This triangular spinous process basically has a superior surface and inferior surface, and the posterior prominent part of the bone is crest-like and therefore is referred to as the crest of the spine. Apart from that, there are two other processes as well. This process that is more flattened in shape and is present along the lateral aspect of the bone here, this is known as the acromion process. Now this acromion process, again you can see here, it also has two borders, a medial border, a lateral border, and because it is present, just the bone is present in this particular anatomical position, so this surface which is directed more towards the superior aspect is known as the superior surface, and this particular surface is known as the inferior surface of scapula. Now in addition to the spine of scapula, the acromion process, a third process here is the coracoid process. Now this coracoid process can be better visualized by looking at the costal or anterior surface of scapula. This you can see here is a much tinier process, and it resembles a crow's beak. So coracoid, which in Greek means crow's beak, this is referred to this particular process. So now coming towards the angles of scapula, because we have assumed or we know that scapula basically resembles the shape of a triangle, and a triangle, as you all know, that it has three borders as well as three angles. Therefore scapula also has three angles. The first angle, which is known as the superior angle, which is present here, then there is an inferior angle, and finally there is a lateral angle. This lateral angle is also known as the glenoid angle because if you see clearly, this lateral angle bears a cavity. This cavity is known as the glenoid cavity. Now there are two tubercles which are present on the superior and the inferior aspect of this glenoid cavity. This superior aspect, the tubercle present on the superior aspect is known as the supraglenoid tubercle, and the tubercle which is present on the inferior aspect is known as the infraglenoid tubercle. From beneath the infraglenoid tubercle extends the lateral border. Now, when you're well familiar with the spine of scapula as well as with the glenoid cavity, you can clearly visualize here that there is a notch that is present between the spine of scapula, which is triangular in shape, and the glenoid cavity. This notch is sort of providing a communication between the infraspinous fossa and between the supraspinous fossa. So this notch here is known as the spinoglenoid notch. Now, because we have understood all the bony features of scapula, it is quite easier for us to identify that this scapula belongs to either the right side or the left side. So, two important points that I always say must be remembered whenever you're determining the side of scapula is to understand the position of the acromion process, and secondly that of the glenoid cavity, and finally the spine of scapula. So, these 2 or 3 points can help you in determining the side of the scapula. The spine of scapula should always be present on the dorsal surface. Secondly, both the glenoid cavity and the acromion process, they must be directed towards the lateral side. So keeping in mind these 2 or 3 points, we can easily understand that this scapula is particularly of the right side. The examiner asks you to hold it in the anatomical position. So this is the particular anatomical position of scapula, in which it is directed slightly downwards, forwards, and laterally. Regarding the attachments of scapula or attachments of any particular bone, it is easier to categorize the attachments in relation to a particular surface or a particular border. So we'll start with each particular bony feature. First of all, starting with the muscular attachments on the costal surface or the subscapular fossa, as well as the costal aspect of the lateral and medial borders. First of all, the subscapular fossa in its medial 2/3 provides origin to the subscapularis muscle. Secondly, this costal aspect of the medial border also provides insertion to a particular muscle that is known as the serratus anterior muscle. Now, the serratus anterior muscle is basically present in the form of 8 digitations. So, the first digitation is inserted along the superior angle. The second digitation is inserted along the costal aspect of the medial border just adjacent to the root of the spine, and the rest of the digitations are inserted inferiorly, extending up till this inferior angle. Now, this was the costal surface. Coming towards the dorsal surface, the supraspinous fossa, as the name indicates, provides origin in its medial 2/3 to the supraspinatus muscle, and just like that, the infraspinous fossa in its medial 2/3 provides origin to the infraspinatus muscle. Apart from that, now discussing the dorsal aspects of the medial and the lateral borders. First of all, starting with the dorsal aspect of the medial border. The medial border basically receives insertion of 3 muscles from superior to inferior aspects on its dorsal aspect. First of all, the levator scapulae is inserted along the superior angle of the medial border on the dorsal aspect. Then inferior to that, there is the rhomboid minor's insertion, and finally the rhomboid's major insertion into the inferior angle of scapula. So now coming towards the attachments on the dorsal aspect of the lateral border of scapula. In its upper part, it gives origin to the teres minor muscle, then inferiorly to the teres major muscle, and finally the inferior angle gives some of the originating fibers of the latissimus dorsi muscle. Now coming towards the attachments in relation to the 3 processes of scapula. First of all, as you can see here, this here is the crest of scapula, or the crest of spine of scapula. So the crest of spine of scapula in its upper border, along with the medial border of the acromion process, it gives insertion to the trapezius muscle, whereas the inferior border of crest of scapula and the lateral border of acromion process, they provide origin to the deltoid muscle. Secondly, we have here the glenoid cavity, and as I already mentioned, there is a supraglenoid tubercle and an infraglenoid tubercle. The supraglenoid tubercle provides origin to the long head of biceps, whereas the short head of biceps brachii originates from the tip of acromion process. The inferior or the infraglenoid tubercle provides origin to the triceps brachii muscle. This coracoid process also gives origin to another muscle of arm that is known as the coracobrachialis, and receives insertion of a tiny muscle of the thoracic wall, that is the pectoralis minor muscle. This pectoralis minor muscle is attached to the superior aspect of the coracoid process. Finally, you can see here in the superior border, there is a notch which I refer to as the suprascapular notch. So just close to the suprascapular notch, the superior border gives origin to the inferior belly of omohyoid muscle. Now coming towards the ligamentous attachments. So the ligamentous attachments can be easily remembered by understanding the joints that are being formed by or the joints that scapula is forming with the other bones. So first of all, you can see here there is a facet present on the medial aspect of acromion process. This is the point where the acromion process articulates with the clavicle to form the acromioclavicular joint, and this facet provides attachment to the capsule of the acromioclavicular joint. Similarly, this glenoid cavity participates in the formation of shoulder joint with the head of the humerus. So the margins of the glenoid cavity provide attachment to capsule of the scapulohumeral joint or the shoulder joint, as well as to the glenoid labrum that deepens the surface of this joint. Secondly, or in addition to that, we have certain ligaments that are attached to the coracoid process. So first of all, a ligament that extends from the tip of the coracoid process to the tip of the acromion process, this is known as the coracoacromial ligament. Secondly, there is a ligament that extends from the root of the acromion process downwards towards the humerus. This is known as the coracohumeral ligament. Finally, there is another ligament that extends from the coracoid process to the clavicle, that is like above. This ligament is known as the coracoclavicular ligament, and it has two main parts: a trapezoid part that is attached to the superior aspect of the coracoid process, and a conoid part that is attached to the root of the coracoid process. In addition to that, I said that there are two main notches present on the scapula. This here is the suprascapular notch. This suprascapular notch is bridged on its superior aspect by a suprascapular ligament, converting this notch into somewhat a foramen. And finally, another notch that was present here is known as the spinoglenoid notch. Again, this is also bridged by the spinoglenoid ligament, converting this notch into a foramen. Finally, coming towards the clinical correlates of scapula, one of the most important clinical condition that is associated with scapula is the winging of scapula. Now, what does the winging of scapula means? That scapula normally has this anatomical position. Scapula in this position is held by the digitations or fibers of the serratus anteriors. But what happens if the serratus anteriors fibers get paralyzed due to any muscular injury or any nervous injury? This will result in laxity of the pull of the serratus anterior muscle and will cause the posterior bulging out of this medial border. So this bulging out is referred to as the winging of scapula, just like a person has assumed wings on his posterior aspect. So this is one of the most important clinical correlation of scapula and usually comes in exams as well. For further videos on gross anatomy, do like and subscribe the channel.